Hello and welcome to Casting Roles. We are a bunch of theater nerds who play D&D and maybe other TTRPGs down the road. My name is Josh. I'm the game master here at Casting Roles. Welcome to the very first episode of The Story So Far, a series of videos that we're putting together here on the channel so that new viewers and old viewers alike can jump right in with us when we begin Season 3. In this series of videos, you're going to learn about the world of Alyria, its background and lore. You're going to learn about the story of the Ticket Takers, our fun, wonderful, misadventurous traveling group of non-standard D&D party members who make up the crazy stories that we see every week here on the show. So thank you so much for joining us. We're a small channel and we would love your support. So if you'd like to check out a new stream, meet some new characters and some crazy new people, then drop a subscribe down below, maybe follow us, and leave a comment so we know why you're here, and welcome to the show. You can also connect with us on our social media platforms. We're on Twitter at Casting Roles. We're on Facebook at Casting Roles ILM. And we're working on building up a space over on TikTok at Casting Roles ILM as well. And if podcasting is more your style, look for the future where we will begin broadcasting the show from the very beginning over on podcast stations. Keep tuned in to our social media for those future elements. But in this episode, we are introduced to the world of Alyria. This is a homebrew world, and we're going to give you a little bit of detail about the background and its history so that you know what space this story is taking place in. And so then next week, when we start meeting the Ticket Takers and going through their story so far through our Season 1 and Season 2, you know about the place where this all is. So let's go ahead and rewind things back a few eons or so ago to the beginning. The Void. Just as most stories begin, this one begins not necessarily in darkness, but in chaos. There was the world only known as the Void, a space of gigantic elemental entities constantly vying and fighting for power. There were the earth elementals trying to take over the fire domain, and the fire domain conquering the water domain, and this constant back and forth even with the air domain sweeping in, led by a group of eldritch beings called the Primals, intense elemental entities waging for complete dominion and control of the Void of Chaos. Now, far from this void, and we're not really sure where from, came the Nine. Once formless beings, purely entities of song and power, the Nine found their way to the Void altogether, and they saw the rampaging chaos that was taking control there, and they decided to bring order. First, they began to sing, and their song gave them shape. Not necessarily like the type of shape you would see in typical godlike constructions of ancient Rome or even your standard D&D pantheon. These entities are entities of pure energy and power, and they began to inhabit certain domains. The Nine began to wage a war to bring order to the Void of Chaos. First, they needed an army, and so they sang into being the Empyreans, the first immortal dragons, 11 in total, 9 representing each of the gods, acting as their avatars and commanders, and then 2 as the matriarch and patriarch of the Empyrean host. These dragons are a little different than your normal standard D&D dragons, as they are almost godlike in power, immortal. Next, the 9 sang into being the Celestials and all of the hosts of the heavens. With this new army in tow, the 9 waged war against the Primals and one by one locked them away into their own individual elemental planes and bound the Void of Chaos into a cage of their own making. Using the energy of the elementals, the 9 pieced together the world of Alyria, first encompassing the Void in thousands of miles of heavy stone and magma, building a solid crust for the planet to sit on. Meanwhile, the water elemental energy flooding the plains and filling the crevices within the rocks with water, both fresh and salt. And then, over time, as the air encompassed and we got an atmosphere, plants began to grow, and they seeded the world with all manner of species. The 9 decided that they did not want to be further alone in the world, and the Empyreans and the Celestials were all well and good, but they each set out to bring forth the humanoid creatures and other living sentient beings. First, of course, the elves and the dwarves and the humans, and then the gnomes and the hobgoblins and the goblins, and all manner of creatures took shape in Alyria. And they didn't see their gods as these distant beings of all power, they walked next to them along the verdant plains or sailed next to them on boats across tranquil seas. This period of history in Alyria was known as the Age of Anor, named after the sun, the bright beacon of light and order in the solar system. For nearly 1,000 years, peace and utopia reigned on the planet. But, as with all things, it was not meant to last. One of the 9, known as Caiaphas at the time, although has since taken the name of the Stranger, or in hushed circles, the Shadowed One, felt like an outsider among his creations. While all of the other 9 had created beings of life and light, Caiaphas was the domain of death and the gentle repose of the afterlife. And those mortal creatures would know them in great detail later on, grew to fear, and their praise was distant, and only a few held their name in high regard. And so Caiaphas left the mortal plane and descended into a realm that had once been controlled by the primals, the abyss, an endless expanse of chaotic energies that reached out and spread like an amoeba, touching on all of the other planes, one of which being the void itself. Caiaphas, trying to run away from the sadness they had left behind in the world of the material plane, descended to that deepest, darkest element of the abyss and found themselves hearing the constant whispers of the primals. Over the course of a few hundred years, these primal whispers drove Caiaphas even deeper into their sadness, and Caiaphas went mad. Beginning to dream there at the gates of the void, Caiaphas's nightmares took shape in the forms of devils, demons, and all manner of dark and evil entities. And with this, they decided that the world of life needed to be snuffed out, and he brought his realm, the Veil, to the material plane, and it began to spread across all of Alyria, wiping out entire kingdoms, subsuming entire species and civilizations of people behind its dark, oppressive, shadowy walls. No one really knows what happens beyond the Veil, but they can only assume that life does not last long there. The gods, becoming aware of their fallen brethren, decided to rise up in defense of their people. One by one, however, their kingdoms far away and small continents here and islands there began to fall, and all of the gods retreated back to the central home, the center heart of Alyria, where Bellinor, the god of light and life, had built their temple. Here, the other 8 gods set up their final bastion of defense against Caiaphas, and upraising all of their armies from their tribes to the Anakim giants to the Empyrean host, as well as the Celestials, they waged a final campaign against the Veil, but it was almost an impossible task, with the endless spawn of demons and devils pouring out and attacking. So, Bellinor, with the greatest exertion of their energy, raised 9 towers, called the Terras Anor. These towers encircled the main continent of Alyria, and once Bellinor's tribal entities, the Way of White, elected a member to sit in each tower, they released the full energy of Bellinor and created a protective shell that held the Veil back at bay. Every other country in Alyria subsumed by the power of the Veil, but here, finally, there was hope that Caiaphas's attack would be halted. However, one of these Way of White members, called the Lightbringers, each one guarded by a guardian, a close friend, a loved one, was murdered. Not by the hand of an evil demon, but by his lover himself. His guardian stabbing him in the back, releasing his energy into the stars, and destroying the power of the Terras Anor that he guarded. From that chink in Bellinor's armor, Caiaphas launched his final assault on the city of Anarvir, the heart of Alyria. Only there, when all of the other 8 gods gathered, were they able to finally defeat Caiaphas. Each began to sing, trying to overpower his discordant melody, and one by one, the gods sacrificed themselves, first turning into keys and locks, and trapping their brethren in a cage made of their godlike essence. Bellinor, with their final action, raised the lands around Anarvir thousands of feet into the air, creating an endless bluff that separated Anarvir from the other continents around and created the lowlands and the highlands of the main continent. With that raised action, buried the cage of Caiaphas deep beneath the earth. And then, slinking into their temple, Bellinor went to sleep. One by one, each of the other Empyrean dragons did the same, and the humanoid mortal creatures found themselves at once alone, their gods abandoning them, the beauty of the dragons no longer honoring the skies. And they began to plan. They had to find leadership, and so the kingdom of Alyria was born. They elected a king who was blessed by Bellinor themselves, and this long-lived family became the centerpiece of order and protection within the realm. But over time, powers far greater than any god, the greed of man, began to reach and try to fill the void of order that had been created by the fall of the gods themselves. And so, over the course of 200 years, Alyria, while looking on the outward elements as a peaceful realm, began to lose its luster. On the edges, where the veil still seethes against the protective barrier created by the Terrace Anor, every now and then dark creatures from the veil break forward, easily put down by the watchful eyes of the Radiant Legion or the Watchmen or one of the mysterious orders. But those incursions have grown greater over the course of time. And it's only a matter of time before maybe another Lightbringer falls, and maybe the Terrace Anor cannot stand anymore. And so, in this world, where once just generations before there was a utopian peace, the world of the Ticket Takers is born. A place where they need adventurers. They need people who are willing to go out into the darkness and deal with challenges that maybe regular people would like to pretend don't exist. And so, welcome to the world of Alyria, and welcome to the story of the Ticket Takers. So, stay tuned next week, where we will release another short little video that will introduce you to the very first arc of the Ticket Takers, where they all gather together. We get to meet the crew and go through some revelations about their backstories that begin to tie them all together. Meet maybe our big bad, or what the overarching storyline is going to be for the main campaign, and then head off to a far-flung city where they add another member to their group. So, we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us for the story so far. Again, let us know what you think about the world of Alyria, and please ask questions below. If there's something about this world that you want to know, I'm always in the comments, and I'm happy to give you some more details about this world and the space that this game is played in. And so, drop down below. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.